Hi, this is Inside My Wallet, episode 3. I'm Andrea Kennedy from Wiser Wealth, and I'm here with Amanda Edwards from Tidy My Money.
And episode 3 is really going to focus on a data point for all your financial position. And we're going to talk about cash flow. So cash flow, there will be two parts to your money. One is cash flow, everything that's coming into your household and everything that's going out. And episode 4 is going to talk about balance sheet. So your assets and your liabilities, the things that you own and the things that you owe, for example, is going to be on podcast 4. But 3, we really want to talk about cash flow and that it's actually a necessary part of, fixing and getting rid of some anxiety that you might have around money. And in a sense, really planting your feet firmly on the ground of where you stand now. Like, what does your boat look like? Like exactly what it looks like.
Does it have leaks? Is it solid?
Is it solid? And so, there needs to be a sense of like radical honesty with yourself. And you're going to have to, decide a process of how you're going to look at it. But it isn't just a case of looking at bank balances and saying, this was my opening bank balance, my salaries went in or whatever went in that month, and this is my closing balance. And this is therefore what I spent. It is a number. It doesn't really tell you what you are doing with your life with money. It doesn't really tell you what you spent your money on. It just says that it went, but you don't really know where. And actually knowing where it goes is going to be really important to deciding if you're happy with that, where it's gone. If you have leaks in your boat and you need to fix them. And also if you have to make, if you're not on goal for your savings or your investments, etc., where you're going to have to control to be able to find money to build, the next levels. So cash flow and balance sheet. Cash flow is definitely part of this financial stability, which you talked about last episode, Andrea. It's really important.
It's the foundation, it's really the foundation upon which everything else is going to reside. And it will give you an insight into the habits, which we also discussed in the last podcast. You'll really understand your habits and what you value from this. And I think what you're saying is then you want to analyze, is this really where you want your money to be going, right?
Yeah.
And your personal journey, I think, has quite a bit to do with cash flow, actually.
Yeah, I mean, I had a, personal trauma in that my father passed away, and then this led me and the family to go through this, financial, disaster for about a decade, with my mum not knowing where things were and people coming up with debt, which she didn't know was right or not. My dad had a business. The other owners basically convinced my mum that there was no value in the business, which ended up in the end not being true. And so we went through a real financial disaster where we went to zero and then -0. So pulled out of school, being homeschooled, getting to a point where there was zero money in our household and we were living at the mercy of family members. And of course, when you start with debt, when you start working, even if it's not your debt, it's your family's debt. Right. And you come from that place, it takes a really long time to get good with money. And I was really struggling because I got to a place where, like, no matter what I was doing, I couldn't seem to get ahead. I was intelligent, I had become an accountant. I knew numbers. I was not afraid. So I was even thinking, that's all great, but I could not get ahead. And I couldn't get ahead because actually I didn't know the facts of my numbers. I didn't know where it was exactly going. I couldn't say, look, this % is going towards just debt. How do I get rid of that? How do I concentrate on helping to pay that down? I have to support, family members. That's fine. It has to be a certain % of my income. It can't just be every time that I'm asked, it can go out. So I think I became radically honest. And then I basically said, I have to slow everything down and I have to look at everything to the cent, to the pence. Like I had to look at everything that was going out from me and coming in to its minutest detail so that I could say, this is good decisions, this is bad decisions. I need to edit something in my life to control that. So, and I then built a process, I built my own process, which is what became Tidy by Money. So it's not just a spreadsheet. It's not just numbers. It's really a way to collect your data and to look at it in all the areas of your life that it goes, so that you can start to control yourself in parts of it.
I just wanted to add for people, a lot of my clients tell me what their cash flow is, but when we actually start going through their cash flow, in some cases they're spending less than they think, but more often than not, people are spending more than they think.
Yeah.
And you really have to look at it over a series of, I would say, minimally 3 months, ideally a year. And people have to understand inflation is constant and that these numbers aren't static. They're not going to stay the same, and people's lives aren't going to stay the same. If you've got kids on the way or whatever, these things will change. So it's just the most basic thing you have to do and always kind of be on top of, not maybe day to day, past a certain point, but you have to be aware of it. It has to be a very conscious thing. And I think what's great about Tidy by Money is it makes people deeply, radically honest and deeply aware of the
where
detail.
It's going, especially if you're not in a great place and you're trying to find out exactly how you got there and how to get out of there. Hopefully it's a tool for that for people. But I mean, I'm definitely an advocate for, you have to look at it always and forever. I mean, that probably comes down to my narrative as well, that, I don't ever want to get into trouble again, and I want to stay secure my whole life with money. But I think that, you mentioned, I've done my personal accounts in detail, for decades, right? I've done it for a really long time. Started with pen and paper, and then obviously it got to what I built, which was the tool on Excel for Tidy My Money. But I had always then started looking at it when I wanted to really focus on my money. And the truth is, no year for me looked the same. No 3 months, no 6 months, no 9 months. One kid came along, then, twins came along, then the third, then a dog, then we changed country. So, I mean, you can say like, oh, my expenses are X, but actually life is forever changing. So I always look at it, because I always want to be aware that I am living the way that I want to do, and I know where my money goes, and I know consciously when I've made mistakes, and I have a very quick kind of adjustment, right? I kind of go, well, we overspent this month. If I know that this month, the next month I can be more conscious, right? I mean, I think you mentioned, when you're coaching people, you don't really want people to take these huge jerking U-turns in their life.
So this is the thing, the more that you're kind of aware of your cash flow and where it's going. And of course, I can appreciate that, a lot of people have been living paycheck to paycheck, that not everyone has wiggle room for this. But regardless, it's still a good process, even if you are living really in that way, because you won't be living in that way forever. Because in one of these podcasts, we'll talk about getting a raise, and we'll talk about other things that will help you advance from where you are. But the point is you really have to be conscious of it, because it makes you really aware of where it's going. And you don't usually need to make large changes, usually, unless you've gotten, in tremendous debt, and that's just a whole nother thing. But people need to start tweaking things, like just deciding, I'm not going to, eat out X number of times a week, or I have been spending a lot of money on this, and this is something I don't actually have to, and it's not as mean, whatever X is, it can be, I don't know. I hate to say, what people who are older, usually in my generation, they're making fun of millennials going out and having avocado toast, which is just stupid. It's just completely ridiculous. I think people need to do things that make their lives fun and allow you to socialize. And, my generation bought garden gnomes. I mean, I've seen so many crazy ways that people spend money needlessly, right? But the point is you have to be on top of it. A lot of people also, I would just add to this, spend money to belong. So they spend money to belong to a group. And if that's where a lot of your money is going, you have got to be conscious of it. And you've got to ask yourself, is this the right group for me? Or should I be doing this all the time with these people? So I've seen people blow through a lot of money just to belong to a certain crowd or whatever. And it's where you'll see a lot of wastage. So I just wanted to add.
But I think looking at numbers, that's what it becomes. I mean, it's probably so trite to say, but knowledge is power, really, in your hands. When you're seeing what you're spending traveling to work, or what you're spending, having two cars, or what you're spending eating out, because you're not cooking at home, whatever it might be. And even the paycheck to paycheck, I've been there, no wiggle room, right? But there is wiggle room, there is. And there's also then the knowledge when I go in and say, hi employer, you're making me travel and I am spending this, and my salary is only Y, and it's this percentage of it. Now, I'm not then coming from a place of, it would be so nice to get. No, I actually went with facts. Like, even,
Excellent.
yeah, I mean, you might even have, if you're in a relationship, you might also have, one partner leaking money more than the other.
Which is
There's
often,
nothing wrong with finding that out with your cash
and I think
flow.
this is the thing. I think the other thing is, if people are listening to this and they are in relationships, there's almost no point in talking about other things with money until this is addressed.
Yeah.
This has got to be the very first step that is addressed. How are we really spending money? And is everybody equally happy? And yes, I've seen marriages get a lot better because of this conversation, and end because of this conversation, because what you're talking about now is what you value, the both of you value. And are you valuing the same thing?
And I think you mentioned that sometimes there is one person that could be a spender and one person that could be a saver, right?
These are the natural things, they're attracted, right? Because one, yeah. And so even in my household, I'm the saver, and I will admit it, my husband's more the spender. But we found a way to talk about this so that it doesn't, blow up our balance sheet or blow up our cash flow, that there's a way to be doing this, that you can still spend a bit and I can save and invest a bit, that's my part of this, saving and investing, and that we can both be happy. Right?
Yeah.
But it's about mutual respect and understanding. If some person is off spending a lot, and a lot of this is, well, I make the money, therefore I get to spend it however they want. Again, that's not an adult conversation, right? Certainly not in a marriage. And we can talk about how to have these conversations later. But if you have the data, as opposed to just assuming where the money's going, if you actually have the data and you've got months of data, that's a very different conversation than saying, you're spending too much money on, gym workout equipment or whatever people spend money on, right?
Yeah. And I think that's why, for me, facts and numbers became, key, not only for my decisions, but then when I got married, and then for my, our couple decisions as well, like based on black and white facts. I know when I do tidy my money, and sometimes, I go through like how much I'm asking them to break down. I mean, literally saying you have to look at every dollar, like you have to look at every pound where it goes. People are like, oh, but then I have to, will I like start policing myself? And you're like, okay, but if you are throwing money away, and the throwing of it away is causing you anxiety, and that's why you're now sitting in this chair, is it not great? Is that not a good thing?
Yeah, well, I think what someone's saying when I hear that is, am I going to start policing myself? The answer will be maybe you will start policing yourself, and maybe that's not a bad thing, right? Because if the whole point of this exercise is to advance from the place that you're at and improvement, then you might have to change some things. But again, when people hear change, and people hate change, this is just, studied forever. You don't have to let's put it this way. I meet a lot of people in their 50s who wish they would have been policing themselves in their 30s.
Yeah.
Okay. And they weren't. So better to kind of do this now.
Wherever that may be now.
Wherever that may be, then do it when you really will feel some regret down the road. And it is never too late to start this. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. But it's unavoidable. I think we have to stress that. This exercise, and that is the homework. The homework is to go out and build your own cash flow, and go and get some, out of your head, or look at your bank statements, or however you're going to build it. Like ideally, you would be looking at 3 months of actual numbers. Where did it go? And there is free spreadsheets available. Like Andrea, I know you've got one on your website, and there's, plenty out there that are free. Tidy My Money has one for like a minimal cost, but also in there is my process. So my way of thinking too. But I literally feel like it doesn't matter how you want to build it, even if you want to get your phone app and build it, whatever it is, you pick your road,
Doesn't matter.
piece of paper and a pencil, like whatever you want to do, but it's unavoidable.
And I would say, if people know that this is a problem or suspect this is a problem, what you actually need is a process, right? So I think using free software like mine or free spreadsheets is fine. But if it is a problem, I think they actually need a process. And I would encourage people to look at what Amanda's put together, because it's an extraordinarily good process. And she is proof that it works.
I do it still. I am my living process.
And it's not just a process, it's an education, really.
Yeah.
And I think it's very minimal cost. And it is the kind of thing people should be spending their money on.
Yeah.
So,
and
yeah.
just so, you know, doesn't matter how you find a way, you know, hopefully it'll be a good way and a sustainable way and a way to open up everything, you know, and get it all honest. But that's the homework, you know, from this, is that you have to go and look at your cash flow. If you, you know, are single, obviously you do that all by yourself. If you're in a partnership, you need to think about, you know, involving your partner in this section, you know, and trying to find out what all your numbers are. You know, I know that in some households, some people aren't in control of the numbers, and it's time to start asking, you know, what they all are as well.
That's right. I would say, if you can't get your partner, if you have the data, but you can't get your partner to do it, just do it. Don't worry
Yes.
about the person, they can catch up to you. If you don't have access to that information, I would start trying to get access to the information, because if you're in a committed relationship of some kind and sharing an economic life, then everyone should know. This should not be something that is a mystery for anybody.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think, you know, there is, you know, maybe in some households, you know, women get, I'm going to speak to women now for a minute, they get very busy with the thousands of things that we have to do when you have children as well. You become responsible, or you're the default parent, you know, in certain aspects in your household. And sometimes there becomes a default accountant in the household, and that can sometimes be, you know, your husband. But you know, you have to let, you know, if you're having worry and you're watching a podcast, you know, about a money mindset and money, it means that you are concerned about it. And so, you know, we're going to talk down in about 2 more episodes about how to talk about it emotionally. So maybe you can write out for now, you know, the questions you have, like, how do I find out how I spend things? You know, do I have access to that information? Maybe for now it's just working out what you don't, you know, trying to ask yourself what you don't know. But like you said, Andrea said, if you can build it with what you've got, go and start with that, and then you can plug in the holes later. But you've got to get started. It's part of the natural cycle of this money process.
I will hold it up one more time as we conclude.
So I love that board.
I'll make a GIF later. We'll sell it. But do your homework on cash flow. It's one of the most important steps before we get down the road to other things.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So I think we've given you enough to think about for episode 3, and then we will come back. Episode 4 is going to be on the balance sheet, so that we're looking at, you know, assets, things that you own, and liabilities, things that you owe. All right. Okay. Thanks so much for joining us.
Bye.
Bye.